and welcome back to the Jazz Ranch. I'm your alter dominant ego man, and welcome groovy chicks and cool cats and finger popping daddies. You know, I've been out on vacation. I've been in Hoboken and in Newark, New Jersey. I've been vacationing and seeing some of the old friends and so on and on. But we're back here at the ranch, and it's been raining like crazy over here, so the grass is growing and the horses are getting high on the grass. Can you imagine that? We got some high horses around here. Anyway, we've got Mr. Ed out here. They don't have any respect for me. When I get on the horse, they throw me right away. But Mr. Ed talks to me, and he most of the time he's putting me down. I get any respect. But then we also have Miss Ella, lady horse, and she actually sings. Can you imagine a singing horse? Now, unfortunately, she sings in the key of B flat only, and she only knows 2 songs: Happy Birthday and Lush Life. Can you imagine that? Anyway, look out. The cage is coming. Here he comes. He doesn't like me introducing his bit, so here he comes. Goodbye. Hello, friends, and welcome back to the Jazz Ranch. I'm sorry about the alter dominant ego man. We all have our alter ego, and we just have to put up with him, and he's going to goof on us and just tolerate him, whatever. But anyway, I have a special program for you this evening. I've coined it. I've given it a term: gourmet chord salad. In other words, it's going to have a lot of interesting chords, upper extensions, and involved chords. So this is a little bit advanced, but if you're ready for that, this is what it's all about. And anyway, it has to do with Duke Ellington's great song called I've Got It Bad and That Ain't Good. And Duke said this. He said, I didn't think that much about playing the piano until I noticed whenever I played and sat down at the bench that a girl would appear on my right side on the bench and another one would appear on the left side of my bench. In other words, he noticed that when he played piano and he played it well, that the ladies would show up and be very interested. So I encourage you to study your piano, play well, and practice, and you will meet the ladies. And if you're a lady, you will meet the gentlemen. So here we go now with Duke Ellington's great song called I Got It Bad and That Ain't Good. I want to talk about what I played, and this is a little complicated, but I gave it the term gourmet chord salad. In other words, a gourmet salad, but it's chords. So the chords are rather dense, or they have a lot of upper extensions. They're stack chords, that kind of thing, that kind of concept. A lot of different chordal techniques in here. But still, it's within the realm that makes sense. It's not abstract in any way. It still relates to the cycle of fifths and good harmonic movement and that sort of thing. Nothing too far out. So we'll start with the introduction. And I did the introduction. You want to come up with something that's going to set up the one chord of the beginning of the song, of the melody of the song, with its related 5 or its dominant. Now we're in the key of G major, which has 1 sharp. So D7 would be its dominant chord to set it up for the first measure. So I want to get to the D chord. So actually I start out on a D and I go like this through the cycle of fifths. D, G, C, F, B flat, E flat, then down a half step to D. That's my maneuver. Now I take the D chord, the D root, and I make it a D7 here, and I put a B flat on top. Now I'm stacking chords, so D7 with a B flat on top makes it a D7 sharp 9, and that's a flat 13 up there. You can think of it as an augmented if you like. And then I go down chromatically. The interesting thing about this in the terms of chords and melody is you can move in cycles here in the left hand and in chromatic movement here in the right. So it's a B flat with a D in the bass to a G with an A in the bass, G7 with an A chord G7 in the bass with an A chord on top to a C7 with an A flat on top to an F7 with a G on top. Now this next one is a B flat minor chord. There's the minor third with an augmented fifth, so it's a little different there. And then I go down a half step to the E flat there. That's an F, E flat chord with an F on the top, E flat on the bottom with an E. Okay, so we have the step chord. You'll see this on the chart. You can download it, so if you can't understand what I'm talking about. It sounds pretty interesting, I think. You can hear the descending movement, you can hear the cycle of fifths, and it all makes sense. It doesn't clash in any way. You can play it in a variety of ways. You can, like that, or rhythmically you could play it. And so that's the variation. So that's the introduction. We end up here on a D9 sharp 11, then we go to D7 flat 9. That takes us now, nice tension into the melody note. Now melody note is there. Now we'll continue with the melody of the song. Now Duke had an interesting melody here. He started out with a non-chord tone, like that da da dee da. So it complements, Melody is the most important thing, of course. So the chords are just secondary. Bass line is the next important thing. So this is the melody and the bass note. Or you could put a C in there. Those are the two most important things, the melody note and the bass note. But now the chords, right? So the chords, how do we come up with these harmonizations? Well, it's just experience, but that's a diminished chord right there. See? So a lot of times, if the note doesn't work with the chord, try a diminished. So there it works with a diminished. It goes on the second beat, it resolves to the G chord. So I want to harmonize it, so I'm harmonizing it like a drop 2. In other words, I'm putting that note, so I'm harmonizing it like that. And then I do this. I put that in there. Now, that's just ears. I hear that augmented chord there. I think it's really pretty. So there you have like a sort of contrapuntal movement in the left hand. We have a lot of things. We have a complement to the melody. We have a bass note. And we have a melody that complements the melody. And then we have a harmonization of the melody. So we have 4 things going on at the same time. 4-part harmony. And now we go to this. Now there's a fourth voicing. How do we know that? They're all fourths. And then I move it up parallel. So this is a great sound, is when you get a fourth voicing and the melody just moves up a half step, you move everything up parallel. So that's the B minor chord there, and then it goes to an E minor. Now I want a really big chord, so now I'm adding 2 notes here with the thumb, see? Now what is that chord? E minor with a sus4, 7, 9, 11. So it's an E minor 11 chord. Now here's the tritone substitute, taking me to the A chord here. Now the A chord is really dominant, but I'm putting a sus in there, suspended fourth. But I'm using that tritone substitute, and I'm also thickening up the harmony by adding a 9, you know, and a sharp 11 in there. So look on the sheet and you'll see all this, if you don't understand it visually here. Now here we go. Now here's another parallel movement in fourths. That's a really nice modern concept to go like that. Then I use a diminished chord here to take me to the E minor. So you want to look at my theory tutorials and see how the dominant chord and its 2 relate. So there's the dominant chord and an approach to the 2 chord, to the E minor. So it's an A13, E flat diminished, right, to the E minor. That makes sense. Now there's the 2 chord of the key, A minor 9. I'm putting the 9 in there. A minor 9. Now I go up to a C chord there, but I'm voicing it in fourths again, like that. Instead of just going like that, I'm voicing it. So it's a combination of voicings that create fourths and interesting things that don't have roots. They're rootless, and then putting roots in. So and when you put the roots in, now you can create big chords. So you have small chords, and you have big chords. So you have small chords like this. And then you have these bigger chords. Now you have this, or now you have a big chord here. Like that. I have a bent finger here, so. Now I'm doing the 10th, so if you can't play the 10th, just jump to it like that. Arpeggiate the 10th like that. I'm arpeggiating the whole chord like that. So that's a 3, 6, 2, 5, but they're all dominant, see? B7 altered, E7 altered, A7 altered, D7 altered. Then instead of going to 1, I go to an inversion of 1. And then I go to the 3 chord, but dominant takes me down. So I'm going through now a cycle, B flat to E flat, see? So I'm going to the flat of the key, I'm going to the flat 6 there. And then I do this little figure, which is another fourth voicing thing like this. Like that. It's pretty much parallel, but it's a filler. And then we'll get to the second A. Okay, if you're with me, you're not a beginner and you're brave, or you're a beginner and you're brave, or you're just, I'm showing you something. So now here I go. Now that I'm just varying what I did the first time. I'm making it a little more interesting. Now I'm changing, I'm reharmonizing here. First time I went to a C chord, now I'm reharmonizing. Now I'm going down like that, stepwise. It's just a reharmonization using tritone substitutes. Okay, so G flat is the tritone substitute of C. First time I used the C chord and went to a B. Now I'm using G flat going to F. So it's tritone substitution. Here we go. And it works with the melody, but you have to create the right chord. So like now that's a big chord. It's a G flat 7 with a 9, sharp 11. Up there you have the 7th again. That's just parallel. Now here's that D sharp chord approaching the E minor, D sharp minor approaching E minor. You can, now you want to thicken it up, just add another note there, like that. See? There's your A minor, not 11. Now, tritone substitute there, F13, now the E. Now this is sharp 9s. Now I go up to rootless chords up here, take it up an octave, just for variation, like this. And those are fourth voicings again. But you see they're spread out now. Octaves in the upper register, then a filler. I don't know. Now here's a substitute chord there. That was a B chord originally. Now I'm using, I'm going, starting on the C half diminished. How do I know how to do that? Or how did I know to choose that chord? Experience, ears, and trying it, and seeing how it sounds, and liking it, and anything works in jazz. And the more experience you have, the better choices you'll make. But if you don't have that much experience, just choose something that sounds good to you. And if you like it, then that's fine. It's acceptable. If it works with a melody, if you like the dissonance, great. I won't overrule it. So now the rule here is half diminished to minor, and then the 3/6, 2/5. And I use a 3. And I use tritone substitute again. So I use the tritone and then tritone substitute there, but major 7. Now here you would resolve to G normally, but I go to G sus. Why? Because I want to set up the 4 chord, which is coming up in the bridge. And then I have a little figure there, like a little filler here, a little melodic filler with approach tone there of half step above the chord, which is another tritone substitute. So tritone substitutes are all over the place here. And then there's the bridge on the C6/9 chord. So now we'll continue with the bridge. Okay, isn't this fun? We got through the 2A sections, and you're still with me, and we're now on the bridge. I'm going to give you a break. It's going to be easier here on the bridge to play. And I'm just going to be using drop 2 voicings and locked hand voicings, which are a lot easier to play. They don't involve spreading your hands out like this in playing tense. So like we'll just go like this. So the chord is this. If you harmonized it with 6 chords and diminished chords on the melody, it'd be like this. See, now it has to work with the melody. So like melody is that. It's on a C chord really, C6/9. So it works like this. C6 to a G7 flat 9. You can call it an A flat diminished, whatever you like. I think of it as a G chord. So it's like the 1 to the 5 to the, that's the 5 again, to the 1 to the 5 to the 1. That's what's going on there really. 1, 5, 5, 1, 5, 1. Right in the key of C. So that's easy. So now we'll harmonize it. We'll take the second note from the top and bring it down in the left hand. It's going to sound really pretty, like this. That's a really classic technique used by composers, arrangers for years and years and years. They've been using it in scores and movie scores and big band scores and everything. Is the drop 2. In early sheet music. You'll even see it in early sheet music. But I was never taught it in music school, and I don't know who teaches it, but anyway. Now here's the drop 2. Now that just, well here's the locked hands, and that just means I'm doubling the melody in the left hand like that. Like, so it goes C chord to F7 now. So I have to make it that there, like a C minor. Same diminished kind of concept. And then to F7 there. And then I put a little filler here. Now we go to B diminished like that. Now I'm using drop 2 here again. Now that would be this. Now you see with the drop 2 you have to alternate between 6 chords and diminished chords. So there's a 6 chord, there's a 6. Now here's the diminished, here's another diminished. Okay, so that's how it works. 6 chord, 6 chord, diminished, diminished. Now if you don't understand this, just go to my tutorials on the drop 2s. I have a whole series of those. Now here we have this is the 3 chord, but now I'm using a rootless voicing up here. I'm using the 3rd inversion, right? Of a B minor, 9 there, to an E7, then another diminished chord approach to the 2 chord A minor, then to the 5 there now with the suspension. Now I'm going to modulate, so here we go into the last A with a modulation, up a half step. So E flat sus, and here we go with the last A section of the song in E flat major. Okay, now we're down to the last section of the song, the last A, and I modulated. Now why modulate? Why go up a half step? Well, because it increases the energy of the song and it creates more of a climactic aspect to the song. In other words, it's going somewhere. It's like you're climbing a mountain and you're finally reaching the peak. In other words, you're almost there, but you're not quite there, and so the energy is there, and then you have more energy in the song, and it's more interesting. And how do you think Barry Manilow made it big? He had great arrangers that always wrote modulations, so for his last chorus, so it always would build and build. They've been doing that with arrangers have been doing that for years and years and years. So I'm just showing you, so now we're up here. So now we have this big sound, as big as we can get, like with the big chords, like 4 notes up here and big tenths up here, So like if you can do this, it's really going to make it sound more professional and really more dramatic. And now I did this interesting thing here. I went into a pentatonic scale, but I did it using a superimposing an altered dominant scale within it, like in a diminished scale. Like I did this, that's pentatonic, and I did this. You see what I'm doing? I'm putting that altered dominant scale. You have to go to a lesson on that to understand. I'm not going to explain it now, but it takes me to here. Oh, here we go. Now the rest of it is just big chords to end, and then trying to create some interesting things at the end with, showing off with your technique with arpeggios and all that kind of thing, which is not what I want to talk about, but I do want to talk about what I put on what I use for the progression at the end. Instead of resolving it like here, I'm in E flat now, so I'm in A flat. So I'm going. So I'm going like C. I went to B major there, and then I went to E major. Let's see if I can get that. And then it would go to resolve to A flat major there. But instead of resolving to A flat major, I used this little trick that I heard Keith Jarrett use on a tune. Instead of going to the 1 chord, he went to the 5 minor. So it's a cool thing. It goes like, expecting to hear the A flat like resolving there, but instead he goes to the E flat minor 9. It goes through a cycle of fifths like this: E flat minor 9 to A flat altered to the 4 chord, then the flat 7 through a cycle of fifths, and then E major, okay, which is sharp 5, and then we go to 5 there, but instead you go to flat 2, like, resolve it to one like that. So it's an interesting, unexpected progression at the end of the tune, and you can do some flourishes and things and, you know, show off a little bit at the end. So like, interesting introduction. Chords, vary them. First A, vary them on the second A. Bridge, a little simpler. Last A, modulate, big. You know, there you have a total arrangement. Just 32 bars, that's all it is. So we'll wrap up now. Wrapping up, I just want you to see the Mr. Herb, the Herbmeister. He's the coolest cat on the block. Anyway, we're glad that you joined us for this version of Duke Ellington's I Got It Bad and That Ain't Good. Herbie, how about it? You got it pretty good, right, bro? Anyway, we have it pretty good over here with the horses and so on, and it's a great time of year, and we hope you have it good too, and we wish you all the best. And until next time, in the words of my great friend Herbie Dresser will say, right? Herbie, let's say, swing loose, and we'll see you next time around. Bye-bye.